These are some former NBA studs who fell off brutally, and we gotta start with Kyle Metrosexual Kuzma. Now, I hate Kyle Kuzma, I'm not about to lie to you boys. When I saw his ass walking into the arena with that pink sweater, I knew his basketball career was over. This dude turned a bit of potential that he had into the emptiest stats imaginable with the Washington Wizards, and is now building brick palaces in Milwaukee. When I see this guy playing, honestly, it just puts me into a bad mood. This dude was on a talented squad full of young dudes and took the opportunity to chuck complete BS shots and stunt into every game like a Balenciaga model. It's no wonder why he gets hate. This guy pulls up wearing lime green, sucks on the floor, and gets mad when everyone keeps looking at him. It's sickening, but believe it or not, it wasn't always like this. Remember when Kyle Kuzma was one of the most promising young players in the NBA? Kuzma was 4th in Rookie of the Year voting after being drafted 27th in the 2017 draft, with averages of 16 and 6 on 45 and 36% shooting splits. Kuzma was looking solid as hell, dude. On a Lakers squad that had a young Lonzo Ball who hadn't found his footing yet, Kuzma proved to be the real bright spot on the team. As a 6'9" guy who could shoot the 3-ball in 2017 and a pretty average rebounder, he looked pretty damn solid when given volume, which turned out to be a trend throughout his career. In terms of his Lakers days, it's hard to not give him credit. Yes, he was a 22-year-old rookie, so he was clearly closer to his ceiling than most guys, but he also showed the Lakers enough for them to hold on to him during the Anthony Davis trade that saw the rest of their young core being packaged away. Going from a primary option on a young team to a role player on a championship team, Kuzma was willing to take a step back and do whatever the team asked of him. His stats and efficiency did dip, and he really wasn't the greatest role player in the world, but he was another guy who could stretch the floor and guard multiple positions, and gave it a solid effort and made an impact on a team that eventually won an NBA championship, so that's no small feat. Kuzma would eventually be dealt to the Wizards for Russell Westbrook, who was a terrible Laker, but the shit show in Washington was really about to begin. These guys sucked so bad that eventually they were just saying, let's let Kuzma try to outscore NBA teams. It was disgusting. I mean, defensively, he's pushing his teammates out of the way to man up with the ball, then pulling up a deep 2 off the dribble in his defender's face on the other end. I mean, the Wizards really thought that having Kyle Kuzma as their vet was a good idea. He wasn't helping anyone, he was just taking their opportunity. Some people online were trying to tell you that Kyle Kuzma was bouncing back on the Wizards with averages of 22 points on 46 and 33% shooting splits. But don't get it twisted. These stats were as empty as it gets. With 15 wins, these guys were playing AAU basketball essentially against a bunch of NBA teams and trying to stack picks. The Wiz eventually decided to get Kuzma onto a playoff team and bring in another vet in Chris Middleton, but Kuzma's tenure in Milwaukee certainly hasn't helped his reputation. Now, in theory, a do-it-all kind of guy with a jump shot and decent defense should be a textbook 3rd or 4th option kind of guy. But this playoff series that Kyle Kuzma just played just shut that out of the water. This guy seriously just went out and dropped 6 points per game on 33% shooting in 22 minutes, highlighted by a historic 22-minute, 0-stat game. Not 0 points. This guy was playing for 22 minutes and didn't do a single fucking thing. This guy was scoring 22 a game on the Wizards and is now playing half the game, just jogging up and down the floor, then hopping in his Louis V jumpsuit and driving home. How do you trade away a former champion in Chris Middleton and in return get a guy who goes out there and literally drops 0 stats? I don't care how washed Middleton is. Kyle Kuzma makes me sick to my stomach, man. His response to his minus 24 plus minus 0 stat game was to come out and miss 2 wide open layups in the beginning of game 2. Honestly, why the hell did they trade for this guy? Who wants Kyle Kuzma? He could be a decent player, I thought at least, if he had at least a 40 basketball IQ, but now I guess this guy's skills are kind of washed up while being lost to shit on both ends of the floor. I mean, this guy's busy getting mad at fans on Twitter for saying he should be working on his game and not shopping all offseason, then goes out to prove our points every single game. I can't believe we're ever high on this guy in the first place. Now, if you're watching this right now, there's an 84% chance you're not subscribed to the channel, so make sure to change that for me. We're trying to hit 100K by the end of the year, and I appreciate all you guys watching. Now, Bradley Beal is the punch-made dev of the NBA. This guy is a certified scam artist through and through. He's on one of the worst contracts in the history of sports, while putting up performances that leave you wondering if this is his make-a-wish. I mean, this guy is out there scoring single-point games and breaking the second free throw while also still being a potato on defense, and dropping the worst plus-minus on the entire Suns team. What that means, if you're not a big stats guy, is that not only are the Suns effectively worse when Bradley Beal is on the floor, but Bradley Beal makes the Suns worse than any other option on their roster. How the hell did we get here? Well, let me take it back to better days. When the Wizards struck gold in point guard John Wall, it effectively made them just a couple pieces away from contention. Then in came Bradley Beal, who immediately let the world know that Wall had his co-star. Jumping from 29 to 44 wins in only his second year in the NBA, Bradley Beal was the perfect sidekick. Wall was pretty much elite in terms of everything that wasn't shooting the ball. He guarded the best ball handlers, he pushed in transition, averaged double-digit assists, and finished insanely well inside. Bradley Beal, on the other hand, was an all-around three-level scorer. He couldn't defend shit, nor did he want to. He was really just there to put up a shit ton of shots, which was A-okay because they were there to go around in Washington. The Wizards would only continue to grow until around the 2017 season. At this point, at age 23, Bradley Beal and John Wall had both blossomed into 23-point scorers, and the Wizards were pretty legitimate threats in the rather weak Eastern Conference. At nearly 50 wins this season, the Wizards may have looked like just another mid-playoff team, but with a third option like Otto Porter, who was a crazy efficient 50-40-90 threat, and guys like Markieff Morris and Marcin Gortat, they had the playoff chippiness, shot creation, depth, and star power that was needed to pull off some upsets. And when they matched up with the Boston Celtics, this is where we really saw it all. Now, this series is mostly remembered for Isaiah Thomas playing through injury, the death of his sister, and a broken tooth. But on the other side of the floor was the Washington Wizards, who kept the intensity at 100%, pushing the series to 7 and making a legitimate name for themselves as a still up-and-coming franchise. The Wizards chose to lock up their superstar in John Wall to a supermax extension that offseason, 2 years before the end of his existing contract. But unfortunately, under 80 games played later, and John Wall would suffer a flurry of serious lower body injuries that completely derailed his career. The year that John Wall was starting his Supermax was also the year that saw the Wizards playing without him. Officially entering his prime at this point, Bradley Beal had taken the jump from a low 20s per game score to an empty 30 per game score, with a slight efficiency dip as you would probably expect. I mean, this guy was winning 25 games, chucking shots up all night long. Bradley Beal may have been up near the top in the league in scoring output, but at no point did anyone really expect a Bradley Beal-centric offense to be anything other than one of the worst teams in the NBA. Beal would drop another 30-point season in 2021, which is no easy feat. But really, when you're winning a combined 59 games, no one is willing to drop everything they have to give you what you want. But in the Wizards' case, he was all they had. With a ton of money to spend in the offseason, and Bradley Beal, who had a 10-year All-NBA career, Bradley Beal was eligible for a $251 million supermax over the next 5 years with the Washington Wizards. Now, I guess they didn't learn their lesson with Wall. I have no idea why they gave him this much money, but where this actually makes no fucking sense is where they make him the 10th player in NBA history to land a no-trade clause. There was no reason to give him this. Really, it's just a throw-in to pay thanks to your players like Tim Duncan, Dirk Nowitzki, or LeBron, guys who aren't going to get traded anyways. The Wizards just heavily decreased his value through overpaying the shit out of him and limiting his trade value before somehow finding a team in the Phoenix Suns under new ownership that was somehow dumber than that. Now, like I said before, and like we all really know, Bradley Beal is not helping the Phoenix Suns whatsoever at this point. He's making $50 million, he's dropping 1 point, and he's flexing his no-trade clause in interviews. Bradley Beal is a straight-up disaster. Well, although it's true that Bradley Beal is not quite living up anywhere near to his contract, to say that Bradley Beal sucks is quite hyperbolic. Dropping 17 a game on just under 50-40-80 shooting splits, Bradley Beal is still clearly a bucket. Where this thing gets ugly is the disastrous fit on the team. With two other bucket getters that are better than Beal ever really was, that don't have a no-trade clause, it's clear that nobody really wants this dude there anymore. And in return, Beal isn't reciprocating any effort back. When his shots come, he takes them. He's still trying to get his points on the floor, but in terms of trying to make a run at a championship with the Suns team, Beal doesn't give a fuck, man. With snarky comments in interviews, terrible defensive efforts, and a completely unbought-in roster of guys, the Phoenix Suns roster is clearly imploding. Bradley Beal's talents really do not help this team win whatsoever, and unfortunately for them, Bradley Beal's contract is close to impossible to get rid of at this point. Now, to segue from insanely shit contract to insanely shit contract, let's talk about Ben Simmons, who actually is no longer destroying his own team while he drives laps around the stadium in his Ferraris. Ben Simmons only makes about $700,000 for his time with the Clippers this season. which is still far too much money for Balenciaga Ben, but I just wanted to give you guys an update on what our boy's been up to. Now, I'm not going to dig into his career, as we all have heard about his peak dropping up near 20 a game as a versatile freak and multiple-time All-Star, and his fall to a dork on the sidelines who refused to play for the Nets and the Sixers. Now, I really wasn't too sure what to expect from Balenciaga Ben, since this motherfucker refused to play for most of his career, or he would be coming back from hurting every bone in his body while sucking ass on the Nets. I mean, given this guy gave us 6 points a game in Brooklyn and still refuses to shoot the ball, I had a little bit of hope for him in a new city, but really not much, man. And what he's been doing on the Los Angeles Clippers looks about right. Now, since March, and now a part of this squad in LA, Ben Simmons has played 18 basketball games, in which 11 of these games, the 3-time All-Star, Rookie of the Year, next LeBron James, Ben Simmons has gone out there and scored 0 points. 11 out of 18 is crazy, dude. I mean, I don't really got much else to say about this guy. It's no buckets Ben from here on out. I'm sure we all knew this guy is wet laundry, but I figured I'd let you boys know how our buddy was doing. Now, if you don't watch the Portland Trailblazers this season, I don't exactly blame you. But one guy who has certainly helped their tanking efforts has been Jerami Grant, as this guy's production has completely fallen off a cliff. Now, I've always liked Jerami Grant a lot. If you don't, you're kind of a weirdo. That's a strange player to hate on. And Blazers fans, even despite his massive dip in production, certainly feel the same, reciprocating the love that he tends to show to the city of Portland. But that doesn't negate that this guy went from one of the most underrated players in the league to now a 14-point scorer, down from 21 the year prior on a miserable 37% from the field. Now, Jerami Grant has spent a hell of a lot of time in his career playing meaningless basketball. That's a negative for many people, like we've discussed with Kyle Kuzma, but in Grant's case, it allowed for him to get some time and develop coming into the NBA as the 39th overall pick. Now, this dude was playing on the 76ers in 2016. They were getting carried by Jahlil Okafor and winning 10 games. It was crazy, but just by his second year in the NBA, Grant had up to stats from 6 points to near 10 and earned a spot in the starting lineup. Now, Grant was a pretty solid athlete, very good defender, and quite the raw scoring talent, shooting just 39.4% from the field and 29% from deep throughout his first 2 years. But with the Russell Westbrook-led Thunder squad that was built around defense and hustle, OKC picked the guy they wanted out of the field of shit and put him onto a playoff roster where his role would slightly decline. Philadelphia was where Jerami proved he was a second-round pick that deserved to be playing NBA basketball. And the Thunder was where this guy really learned how to play in the NBA. He played a small role with just 5 points per game in 20 minutes, but without a real minute increase, this guy went from 5.4 to 8.4 points the next season, strictly due to a 7% increase in his shooting efficiency, all the way up to a really solid 53%. Jerami was improving every year. In his third season with the Thunder, alongside MVP caliber Paul George and still in his prime Russell Westbrook, was when Grant went from a B-list to an A-list role player. Jerami Grant clearly busted his ass that offseason, and it did wonders, jumping from 29% to a 39% three-point threat. The improvements turned him into a total 3-and-D guy, a fantastic role player dropping 13.6 per game, and now a full-time starter on a competitive playoff team. Grant would stay on a similar trajectory, again with a slightly discounted role, after being moved to the Nuggets for their bubble run in the 2020 postseason. Now, Grant was due for a payday. He's a 3-and-D guy in the 2020s, this guy's getting like 20 M's a year from somebody, and the Pistons were the ones to offer it. But unlike we had seen before, Grant didn't just improve this year, he completely broke out. Jerami Grant didn't just come to Detroit for the money, but also the opportunity to let his talents blossom on a lottery team once again. Grant jumped from an 18% to a 28.5% usage rate in Detroit, and at 22.3 a game, Grant was showing a lot more of his game than we had seen in the past. With buckets and isolations, post-ups, and all types of shit, Grant had the opportunity to show off his full skill set, and over time, it was clear he kept working on his game. After 2 years scoring around 20 a game, Grant would be moved once again, landing in Portland to play alongside Damian Lillard in his final season with the team. And with the role as a second option, Grant maintained his scoring and defensive outputs while only upping his efficiency to pretty elite levels for a 20-point per game guy. With Dame traded that offseason, the Blazers were officially in tank mode, and with Jerami Grant's contract up, he had the choice of where he wanted to go. I mean, coming off a 20-point per game season as a pretty solid defender, shooting 47% from the field and 40% from three with 80% at the line, he's bound to get paid anywhere, man. But choosing to stay with the Blazers, signing a 5-year, $160 million deal was an interesting decision. On the one hand, I don't know if he could have gotten quite this much money elsewhere, but really his talents are perfect as a number 2 or very, very good number 3 option on a contending team. Chances are during the year of the new TV deal, this guy was probably coming close somewhere else. Jerami Grant kind of made it known that he prefers these low-pressure games where he can spread his wings, and although I can't really knock him, it really just is what it is. Dropping 30 a game on JV is pretty fun too, I guess. Now, Jerami Grant had a Jerami Grant season the next year while the Blazers were terrible. It was really what the world expected, but fast forward to this current season, and Jerami Grant has clearly had a very steep statistical regression at just 30 years old. Dropping from 21 a game on 45 and 40% shooting splits, Grant is now scoring 14 a game, shooting a terrible 37% from the field and a decent 36% from deep. Although his 3-ball is still dropping, why is Grant shooting a miserable 38% on his 6 2-point attempts per game? Well, this is where things get weird, I guess. I can't exactly explain to you why it is, but I can explain the changes that took place. Grant is now shooting a pitiful 50% at the basket compared to his peak at over 70%, and his average of at least in the mid-60s throughout his whole career. In the meantime, Grant has gone from the second highest usage rates of players clocking significant minutes to basically 4th or 5th. Grant is now a 3-and-D role player once again, and he is not taking it too greatly. I'm sure he isn't lying about loving the city or anything like that, but at this moment, this relationship isn't going too great in terms of what they can do for each other. But unfortunately, Portland threw him a bag that is going to be very hard to dispose of. Grant opted in to play meaningless basketball and still lost his role in favor of young players. I mean, maybe this guy got paid and stopped caring too much about the game, which is pretty easy to do when you're guaranteed to go home early every season. But likely due to his stats and bag chasing and some injuries sprinkled in, we've seen a pretty bad fall from Jerami Grant. Now, Jordan Poole is another guy that NBA fans love to rip apart, and it's pretty clear to see why. He's a pretty goofy dude that plays on a terrible team, chucks a zillion shots, doesn't really help with the rebuild, and doesn't try and ounce on defense. I mean, he's really a hard tool to make work effectively on a basketball team. But in Golden State, at just 22 years old, this guy was averaging nearly 20 a game on the team that won the championship. Poole may be putting up numbers today with the Washington Wizards, but the question isn't even if these stats are empty, but if Jordan Poole has legitimately regressed as a player. Poole wasn't supposed to be a cornerstone, picked 28th overall by the Golden State Warriors in the 2019 NBA draft. He entered the league as a streaky scorer from Michigan, a guy with confidence but little polish. His rookie season was very rough, shooting a dog shit 33% from the field and 27% from 3, with a minus 9.6 box plus minus. He sucked. He looked like a G League player, and for stretches, he was one. But the Warriors, in the middle of a soft reset while Steph Curry and Klay Thompson were injured, and the team was tanking to draft James Wiseman, who also sucked, gave Poole the minutes he needed to develop. By year 2, things really started to click. Poole put up 12 points per game in limited minutes, on a much better 43 and 35% shooting splits. He looked pretty comfortable, less erratic and more in control. He spent time in the G League bubble with Santa Cruz, where he started to develop more of a shot creation role. Golden State's development staff clearly saw something in him that most of the league had missed, an irrationally confident shot maker with real creation upside. The 22 season changed everything for him. With Klay still recovering and the Warriors looking to reassert themselves as contenders, Poole was thrusted in the starting lineup early and more than held his own for a guy that was a G Leaguer last year. He averaged 18.5 points per game, 4 assists, and shot 36% from deep. His swagger fit the team's DNA. He danced into threes, finished acrobatically at the rim, and pushed the pace offensively. He wasn't just surviving, he was thriving, and when the playoffs came, Steve Kerr trusted him with big minutes. With 7.6 3-balls a game, Poole fit into the Warriors system pretty damn well. Poole was played alongside Klay or Steph, and in a weird way was somewhat used like Steph himself. With a high-post playmaker like Draymond, Poole was funneled through all types of off-ball screens to create an advantage that he could attack and score in without needing to run him in constant on-ball screens with playmaking duties. He was a bit of a typical shooting guard with some shot creation skills and a point guard's body. The Warriors were a very solid team at this point, but as a 3 seed with aging stars and key starters like Poole who were very young, and a guy like Andrew Wiggins who may have been an all-star but was hard to trust nonetheless, the Warriors had some modest expectations going into the postseason. In the first round against Denver, Poole exploded, man. He averaged over 28 points across the first 3 games, shooting 66% from the field and 59% from 3. This guy went nuclear against the best player in the world. Denver's defense was not ready for a guy that was this deep on the scouting report going berserk. He punished switches, beat drop coverages, and ran 2-man actions with Draymond like a veteran. This was a different type of Warriors, man. Of course, there were 4 years withdrawn from the KD years, and the team was closer to that 2015-2016 team in terms of talent, but they just had way different tools. Really just in terms of perimeter scoring, they had some weapons they didn't have in comparison to the pre-KD teams. I mean, Iguodala, Barnes, and Livingston, and whoever else they had were great, don't get me wrong, but I don't know that anyone kept the pressure on perimeter defenses like Poole and Wiggs when Steph and Clay weren't scoring the ball. I'm not saying this to nerd out on you, but to give you some context of the importance I feel Poole played when it came to matching up with the Grizzlies in the second round. At a 2 seed, they were the on-paper favorites, and with on-ball defenders like Ja, Desmond Bane, Dylan Brooks, and bigs like Steven Adams and Triple J, the Grizzlies were the toughest matchup they played in the Western Conference, and easily had the personnel to take down the Warriors. But again, Poole's contributions were massive. With fantastic stoppers on the perimeter, having Jordan Poole to get you 18 a game off the bench gave the Warriors the edge in the series. After a relatively uncompetitive Western Conference Finals with the younger Luka not shooting as well, this set the stage for the Warriors vs Celtics NBA Finals. And in their return, Steph Curry shut up pretty much everyone who called him a regular season player. Steph carried the Warriors' offense, the ball went through him every chance, and everyone not named Steph saw their shots decrease, including Poole. But in the slightly different role, Poole did all you could ask, staying efficient and knocking down the shots that did come, and getting the job done at the end of the day. By the end of the postseason, Poole had averaged 17 points per game, shot 51% from the field, and hit 39% from deep. The Warriors won the 2022 NBA Finals. Curry was the Finals MVP, but Poole had clearly helped them get there. He played like their third best offensive option, sometimes even the second. Golden State rewarded him with a 4-year, $140 million extension. The contract changed the math. Poole was no longer the young guy playing with house money. He was a core piece expected to elevate. Then came the punch. In October 2022, Draymond Green clocked Poole in a closed practice. The video leaked. The world saw Draymond in an even worse light, if that was possible. The story quickly became more than just a fight. Draymond had his words about Poole's attitude after his big boy extension, which could be true, could be a bit of a cover-up, but his punch was so fucking violent that nobody cared, man. Whether Poole was being a prick or not, the damage was done. The punch fractured team chemistry and trust. Green was fined and briefly stepped away. The organization prioritized keeping the core intact, but admittedly by Steve Kerr afterwards, that whole year was ruined by the punch. Somebody had to go. 2023 Warriors had 2 timelines in conflict. Curry, Green, and Thompson still chasing rings, and then Poole and the younger guys trying to find their roles. Poole's numbers weren't awful, 20 points per game, 4.5 assists, but his efficiency dropped, turnovers spiked, and defensive issues worsened. He dribbled too much, took ill-advised shots, and looked disengaged on defense. The joy and looseness that had made him electric now looked a little reckless, and although he was fun as a role player, when you're getting paid like a star, it's time to play like one. His decision-making late in games was a huge problem. One moment stood out in a January game against Memphis. Poole took a deep 3 with 1:14 left and the Warriors up 3. Steph, visibly frustrated, threw his mouthguard into the stands and got ejected. That pretty much summed up the team's season. In the playoffs, things hit a wall. Poole averages 10.3 points on 34% shooting in the second round against the Lakers. In Game 4, with the game tied and seconds remaining, he took a rush 28-footer and missed by a mile. He looked lost, out of rhythm, and out of favor. Kerr benched him for long stretches, and by the end of the series, it was clear that the Warriors had a pretty easy decision to make. In June 2023, Poole was traded to the Washington Wizards for Chris Paul. Golden State chose Draymond pretty much. Despite filling up the stat sheet way better than Trey, it's hard to say they made the wrong decision. More guys in the league can score than can do what Draymond does for this team, and the way he allows Steph to truly play his game is beyond essential for the Warriors. I mean, it did sting a bit, since just as a human being, watching Dre smack the stupid out of this dude and basically go unpunished made most people feel a certain way. But if this was my team, I'd be glad they made this decision as well. Now, this trade for Poole meant a lot. He was going from an established dynasty, which is built for allowing a small shooting point guard to become one of the best players of all time, to a team that had nobody. These guys won 15 games, and him and fucking Kuzma were leading the team. The Wizards were trying to win, just to see what they had, really, I guess. The results were brutal. Poole's efficiency got worse. 40% from the field, 32% from 3. His shot selection drew weekly ridicule. A low light went viral, Poole calling for an ISO, dribbling through his legs 5 times, then hoisting a contested 3 ball off the side of the backboard. Even Wizards fans turned on him, and by February, he was coming off the bench. Knowing this season Poole has been playing better, he's over 20 a game with a good 38% from deep, but now 3 years older on a shit team compared to a championship one, he really hasn't gotten any better. Compared to being a crucial 6-man type of guy on the literal champions, this guy looks completely different. Really, without knowing what he's done in the past, this guy looks like his ceiling as a shot chucker on a tanking team. He's not effective whatsoever. I think in the case of Poole, he's one of those stories of a team who truly did untap a player's full potential. In a system he didn't need to create for others or really worry about guarding any tough matchups, he could really just do what he did best and put up an assload of points, and he did that really well. Now, did Jordan Poole fall off? Well, I know what the title says, and just based off the statistics, it's hard to say that's exactly true, but in terms of trajectory, he's completely flattened out, and it's a story worth telling nonetheless. Now, Phoenix is an absolute shit show right now. They're a poorly assembled group of talents. This team is never going to work in its current state, and as soon as they get a chance, the team should be blown up so bad it causes a nuclear winter. Phoenix is such a mess that even the Phoenix residents hate their own damn franchise. Yet, more than Bradley Beal, who's robbing them, and more than the front office that put this team together, the Phoenix Suns can't stand Jusuf Nurkic, of all people. When Nurkic arrived in Phoenix, the expectations were pretty high. He was a centerpiece, if not the centerpiece, of the deal that sent Ayton packing to Portland. And while Ayton had worn out his welcome with fans and even some teammates due to his perceived lack of interest and toughness, Nurkic had been seen as the antidote. A rugged, hard-nosed Bosnian center who could anchor the defense and bang bodies in the paint with a physicality that Ayton never embraced. I mean, Ayton was kind of a total baby. He didn't give a fuck as long as he got paid. I wouldn't want his ass either, and Nurkic for a while had been a pretty solid defensive-minded center with a pretty good frame and decent touch to pair. The Suns, with the big three of KD, Book, and Beal, have since been proven ineffective at this point, but at one time, their ceiling looked high. KD had a decent first year with them. Beal was scoring 30, of course. I mean, it didn't make a ton of sense, but this much talent on one team meant they were clearly gunning for a title. And Nurkic, in theory, was the kind of role-playing big man who could quietly thrive in that ecosystem. And at first, it actually looked pretty seamless. He started a team-high 76 games in the 24th season, playing more than anyone else on a roster full of stars and specialists. His individual numbers weren't eye-popping with 11 and 11, solid but not flashy, but he gave the team the physicality you sure as hell weren't getting from anybody else. The Suns, not exactly known for defensive ferocity, became surprisingly respectable on that end, ranked 13th in the NBA, thanks in large part to Nurkic's interior presence. He wasn't a shot-blocking machine, but he used his size, smarts, and physicality to clog the paint and hold his ground. More importantly, he gave them a little bite, something that Ayton sure as hell never did in his lifetime. Now, there are certainly questions about the Suns' construction of the current roster prior to the 2024 postseason, but matching up with the Timberwolves, who they swept in the regular season, these guys completely flipped the script, spanking the Suns in 4 games who looked to be in complete offensive and defensive disarray. Now, these guys got ripped to pieces, don't get me wrong. I even dropped a video to tap into the hate wave, but the crosshairs were mostly aligned on the head of Bradley Beal and the Suns' ownership. But then came the 24-25 season, and everything unraveled. Fast. Right out of the gates, Nurkic looked lost, sluggish, ineffective, and just all out washed, man. Through his first 12 games, he was shooting an abysmal 38% from the field, just unacceptable for a 7-foot bulldozer. He was missing layups, botching screens, turning the ball over at a ridiculously high rate. He looked like a total shell of himself and didn't look like an NBA player. He was a guy struggling not just with physicality, but mentally. His movements were stiff, his confidence was visibly shaken. It didn't take long for the murmurs to start. Was Nurkic playing injured? Was he washed? Or was he checked out? Well, not only did the issues not get better, but Nurkic looked even worse. As the season wore on, Nurkic not only failed to bounce back, he fell out of the rotation entirely. About a month before the trade deadline, he lost his starting job to Mason Plumlee, and from that point forward, Nurkic didn't see the court again for 17 straight games. A brutal string of DNPs for a player who had once been counted on nightly. It wasn't just on-court performance that was the issue either. There were whispers of locker room friction. Reports of tension between Nurkic and Coach Bud began to surface. When asked about the relationship by a reporter, Nurkic didn't mince words. He flatly replied, "We don't have a relationship." I mean, this guy kind of looked like a baby, to be honest with you. He came out playing like total shit. They had to bench him because they're in win-now mode, harder than anyone else in the league. And when his role diminished, he started talking about his coach, unfollowed Book and Durant, and started dropping backhanded comments about dudes that are supposed to be his boys. The Suns acted accordingly. On February 6th, less than a year after he had been traded, Phoenix shipped Nurkic off to the Charlotte Hornets to likely play meaningless basketball for the rest of existence. But this wasn't a normal trade. The Suns had to attach a first-round pick just to get his salary off the books. It was the NBA equivalent of paying someone to haul away your broken fridge. That's how far his value had plummeted. I mean, now this guy finds himself 30 years old in fucking Charlotte. Just due to his physicality and grit he showed in the past, even with the statistical decline, it's certainly not impossible for him to get another role somewhere, but after this dude just killed his team's whole locker room chemistry, why the fuck would a contender want Yusuf Nurkic? The NBA bubble was one of the strangest chapters in league history. An empty gym at Disney World, no fans, no travel, just basketball, man. But within the weird AAU-like setting came some of the purest basketball that we've ever seen. Players were relieved of the pressure of crowds, and it created an incubator for explosive, unfiltered scoring talent. Jamal Murray spazzed, Devin Booker went crazy, and then there was TJ Warren, who turned into a god. Warren had always been a bucket getter, drafted 14th by the Suns in 2014. He was a mid-range savant at NC State, finishing efficiently around the rim with an awkward, old-school game. In his first 2 seasons with Phoenix, he shot better than 50% from the field, even though he was virtually a non-threat from deep. He shot just 22% from 3 at one point, but Warren's value was in his touch, his floater game, runners, short pull-up shots. He got to his spots and made defenses pay without ever needing to hijack the offense. In 2017, Warren had earned a full-time starting spot, averaging 14 points and 5 rebounds as the Suns' third option behind Bledsoe and Booker. He didn't need the ball too much to produce. The following season, with Bledsoe out of the picture, Warren saw more opportunity and delivered, putting up 19 and 5 while continuing to score at a high clip. He wasn't a playmaker, he wasn't a defender, but if your team needed 20, he'd find a way to give it to you. Then something wild happened. He developed a jumper in 2018-2019, Warren's three-point attempts tripled, and his percentage jumped from a career 22% to a scorching 42.8%. Suddenly, the mid-range killer was stretching the floor too. He averaged 18 per game while shooting 54% from the field and 43% from 3 before an injury cut his season short. But Phoenix, in full rebuild mode around Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, didn't see him as a part of the long-term play. They traded him to the Pacers in 2019 in a salary dump. Indiana was more than happy to take a flyer. There, Warren kept doing what he was best at, getting buckets, dude. He averaged 18 a game on elite efficiency with 53% from the field, 37% from deep, and 81% at the line. He didn't need a ton of touches, didn't dribble the air out of the ball, but then came the pandemic, and with it, the NBA bubble. A lot of players were unsure about the format. Isolated, no fans, no family for weeks, but others saw opportunity. Warren was one of them. With Domantas Sabonis injured and Malcolm Brogdon limited, Warren became Indiana's go-to guy, and he detonated. He opened the bubble stint with a 53-point masterpiece. Not an empty, meaningless 50, this was a full arsenal on display. Pull-up threes, post fades, floaters in traffic. He followed it with 34, then 32, then 39. In 6 games, he averaged 31 points while shooting 57% from the field and an insane 52% from 3. It was a Jeremy Lin type run, except his shots weren't lucky. They were repeatable. He looked like a star in there, maybe even a future all-star. He had added a perimeter game to his already elite inside scoring and had proven he could carry a team offensively, at least in short bursts. But just as quickly as he rose, the collapse began. The Pacers were swept in the first round by the red-hot Miami Heat. In the following season, Warren played just 4 games before being shut down with a stress fracture in his left foot. What was initially thought to be a minor setback became a career-altering injury. He missed the entire 21 season, then the entire 22 seasons, 2 years, fully gone. By the time he returned in the 2023 season with the Brooklyn Nets, he clearly wasn't the same. His minutes were down, his role was smaller, and his efficiency had tanked. He looked slower, less confident, less decisive. The bounce that had made him slippery in the lane was gone. His handle was looser, his three-point shot, once a strength, regressed back to inconsistency, and he was traded back to Phoenix as a throw-in who barely played. In 2023, he signed a 10-day with the Wolves, a team just looking for depth. He hung around for a bit, but didn't carve out a role, and now at 30, he's out of the league. Warren's story isn't too unique. It's a brutal reminder of how quickly things can change in the NBA. One minute, you're the top of the league, dropping 50 and looking like a future star. The next, you're rehabbing the same foot for 2 years while your spot gets filled by the next wave. Thank you for watching if you made it this far. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. And as always, I'll see you boys in the next one. Peace out.